All businesses fail due to a lack of sales. That's why some of the best businesses are led by founders who know how to sell. Not only did they cut their entrepreneurial teeth on sales, but they loved it. Alec Hartman, the CEO of TechDay and the co-founder of DigitalOcean, is an entrepreneur, investor and mentor to startups. Whenever Alec gives talks to accelerators at his TechDay conferences, he impresses upon a younger generation of startup founders the need to get out there and talk to people. You see, it's all too easy sitting behind your computer screen coding away on that app. But the best founders are also out there getting their hands dirty. Working at the coalface not only helps you drive the lifeblood of your business, cash flow from sales, but also, and probably most importantly, it gives you a real insight into how your customers think and feel. In this interview on Founder FM, Alec talks about his experience with DigitalOcean, growing the business to over 500 people, as well as his start in entrepreneurship as a kid selling computers out the back of his mom's car. This is real entrepreneurship, everybody, the hustle. So let's take a trip to the US to meet Alec Hartman of DigitalOcean and TechDay on Founder FM.
Founder FM. You're listening to Founder FM with your host, Graham Brown.
Hello and welcome to Founder FM. My name is Graham Brown. This is the voice of the entrepreneur. Today, I want to introduce you to Alec Hartman, CEO of TechDay, co-founder of DigitalOcean, entrepreneur, investor, mentor and advisor to startups. We're going to talk about growing a successful business. We're going to talk about how to deal with doubt when sharing your business vision and the importance of getting out there, why all good startup founders need to get off their ass and go and meet the market. Alec, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was so well said, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. You've got some big projects on your plate at the moment. Let's talk about those first so people can get an idea of who you are and what you're at. TechDay and DigitalOcean. Tell us a little bit about both of those projects.
Sure. So started them both about 5 years ago. Really started TechDay, which is an event for entrepreneurs. We have an event in New York, in Los Angeles, here in the States, and in London, and growing to more cities as we can. Started that event to help entrepreneurs connect with sort of the resources they needed to grow. That's press, investors, talent. And I did it because we really had a need that we had to scratch at DO, and all of my other startup founder friends. The landscape was much different 5 years ago. Right. Really had that same need, and wanted to get those resources, but there was just no organized or systematic way to do it. So TechDay really became our forum to connect with those resources and help our businesses meet other founders and just generally propel what we were doing. DigitalOcean, is a cloud hosting platform. Started about 5 years ago. We went through Techstars out in Boulder. And since then, the company's been growing quite a bit. I left the day-to-day a little while ago, but the company's going very strong. They just introduced a bunch of really new cool products. And the premise there is to help developers by making infrastructure really, really simple. And that was a big need we saw in the market. That market has grown. That market has grown a lot. People have really taken to tech, and that's awesome. As a developer myself, I find that to be so cool and so gratifying. And as a result, they need a place to host, and they need the knowledge around how to create those environments, and that's what DO provides.
Right. And DigitalOcean has grown with that market. How big is it now?
Big. really, really big. Lots of data centers. Just another one opened in India. Multiple continents big at this point. It's grown quite a bit from 5 guys in a room in Brooklyn.
And how many guys are there now?
200 plus From the last update I saw. So
from 5 to 200. That must fill you with a sense of pride, no, when you see all those people working for DigitalOcean.
It does. And the coolest thing about knowing how successful the guys have been at growing the company has been the sort of most gratifying part of it is that you've got all of those developers who weren't in tech a few years ago, and now they're creating the most amazing things, and they're doing it all with stuff that we dreamt up 5 years ago.
And you've left the day-to-day of that, you say. I mean, you were a co-founder, one of those 5 original guys that set up that business, but you've left that business on the day-to-day basis, but you're still active in it, I guess, in the, the strategic side and as an advisor. I mean, how was that actually sort of stepping back from the business for you?
For me, I wanted to focus on working with entrepreneurs, and that's what I did with TechDay. TechDay that's what it does. It's an event that literally lets me be hands-on with mentoring and advising entrepreneurs. So yes, I stepped back from DO. That was hard. It was really hard. But ultimately, I wanted to do where I thought I could make the most difference and I had the most passion. And while I'm incredibly passionate about infrastructure and solving those technical problems, I think for me, just getting to talk to entrepreneurs, figure out where their problems are, help them explore the world that they haven't really been a part of before, that's the most fun thing I could possibly be doing every day. And so I get up every morning, sometimes in different cities that I'm not even sure where I am. And I think, this is the coolest thing I could possibly be doing with my day is talking to entrepreneurs and helping them through things. So, when I think back at sort of my decisions and my path and my trajectory in life, I'm pretty happy with what I do now. And I think it's really cool. So
it's great. And it's great to be out there helping entrepreneurs. I think we need to preface this a little bit, put some context of where you came from, right? Because I know you say you're a developer, Alec, but you're an interesting breed of developer. You're a developer who can sell, right? And that's sort of a unique subset of developers. And let's talk about that a little bit, because often there's a group of developers who are great at selling, and then there's this group of developers who are great at developing and making stuff, right? They're the engineers. And then you've got these entrepreneurs who are great at selling but can't make stuff. You kind of sit in the middle here. Tell us a little bit about that. I'm curious to know where you got your start in business, and, were you a lemonade stand guy? I mean, how did it all kind of come together?
Close. If there were such a thing as a computer stand, that's what it would have been for me.
And where did that start?
I mean, I grew up in Florida. I was a kid. Computers were, this was pre all of the modern computers. You used to have to buy them and assemble them yourself. And, CD-ROM drives were just getting big. And it was a whole different view on what computers were. And so, a lot of people wanted the coolest stuff, but it just wasn't available. So I used to build and sell computers out of the back of my mother's car when I was a kid. So I grew up always trying to sell and always trying to, not even necessarily to make money, but just to get out there and move products, just to talk to people to see what they wanted and to facilitate sort of that delivery of something cool for them. And then sales became really interesting to me. The dynamics of it, how it works, what goes into a sale, what increases the likelihood of a sale. So all of the technical aspects, all of the, conversion analytics, all of that stuff from a very early age just really interested me, because when you look at how many things are bought in a given day across the US or the world, it's millions upon millions of sales, but something influences the purchase of those sales. Something makes that divide between a company that's just rich with sales and a company that's standing in the middle of a room, not making any. And so I think that's where I got my passion for sales and product sort of in the same combined set, right? It was, I want to build a product, but I want to build a product that people want.
Right. So you're building these computers and selling them out of the back of your mom's car. Where were you doing that? Where did this take place?
It was a lot of word of mouth. I was using my high school network at the time. But, it was friends of my parents, and it moved to their friends, and I asked for referrals, and I would have my mother driving me around, and I would sell these things. And then it got to the point where I thought, the dynamics of the sale were so interesting. I did direct mail and flyers, and I experimented with postcards because, remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was the way to get the word out.
So you were doing postcards and direct mail, and your mom was driving you around to people's houses?
She was, yeah.
Bless her.
It was great.
You were building this business. Did you actually turn that into an ongoing business, or was it kind of a part-time thing for when you were at high school?
I was a full-time high school student.
Right.
This was really for fun. Building the computers led me to learn PHP and then later to learn Ruby. And so, I became a developer by proxy because the stuff that I wanted on those computers and the stuff that I wanted on the internet, it wasn't there. And that frustrated me. So I wanted it to be there, and I wanted to put it there myself if I needed to. So it grew from selling computers to, working on people's websites and building presences. That type of thing was really foreign to everyone at that time, right? The early 2000s were just sort of anyone's land on the internet. So then my passion for internet stuff just grew and grew and grew, and here I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole thing about being a developer and you love getting out there and talking to people. And as you said yourself, when you were selling those computers early on, you weren't doing it necessarily for the money. You were doing it just for that kind of interaction, right? You are actively involved in advising and mentoring a whole bunch of startups that come through TechDay. And we'll talk about your events in a minute. What kind of things could these startup entrepreneurs, these founders do to get the kind of experience that you had? Because I think it's so valuable for a developer or a founder to get out there and talk to people. And it's something they're quite scared of doing, right? Because you've got to get out from behind the computer screen. I mean, what do you advise them to do when you see them turn up and they've got a great app or some piece of technology, but they haven't necessarily spent time out there talking to people?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's, I think, the catch for many entrepreneurs. There's a whole sea of advice when you announce to the world or your friends or your LinkedIn network, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to do something, I'm going to get out there and be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of uncertainty, and especially if it's the first time you're starting something,
right.
The first time you're out there building a company, there's a lot of advice, and a lot of it just, it's hard to weigh and it's hard to balance. And so what I've found, especially for the first-time entrepreneur, I wouldn't say this is the path for everyone, but for most people, it's figuring out where your passions lie, figuring out the problem that you want to solve, and then understanding the market for the solution of that problem. And the market for the solution of that problem are the people that you should be talking to. You should be hitting them up on LinkedIn. You should be going to conventions or meetings where they would be. You should be actively talking to them because they're going to be your advocates. They're going to be your evangelists. They're going to be the people who buy your product. And I think most importantly, they're going to be the people who tell you whether you're doing a good job or not. So keeping their feedback in the loop the entire time you're building your company seems to me to be the most important thing you could be doing if you want to build a sustainable company. If you want to build one that closes in a couple of months, then I guess don't take anyone's advice that might be your buyer and just wing it all. That certainly worked in the past, but I don't think it works very often. So it's really get out there because these people represent a constituency that you kind of can't afford not to incorporate into your planning.
Should I go out and talk to these people even without a product? Let's say I've got an idea, I don't have any customers yet, at an early stage, maybe I have a prototype. Is that okay? Am I wasting people's time talking to them about this idea, or is it okay to go out and start doing this? At what point should I start doing this? I'm kind of getting to.
Well, I don't think you should be afraid of making relationships and connections, even if it's just learning about what people's pain points are. It doesn't necessarily mean that when you meet someone, you need to go out just for you. You need to talk about just your stuff. I think when you meet people, and part of having meaningful relationships is understanding where their pain points are, asking them questions about what would make their life better, and crafting your solution to the problem you're ultimately looking to solve around that. So I think if you're going out to talk to people for the sheer purpose of just trying to pitch your product or get feedback, that might not be the best way to start a relationship. But if you're going out to meet people and say, hey, listen, what's going on? What's bothering you?
Right.
What is the thing that is keeping you up at night or keeping you on edge, or what would make you 500 times more productive? I think that type of relationship, when you're looking for those people and you're willing to be selfless as opposed to selfish in that type of situation, then you're on the path to making really good, really long-lasting relationships. And it's kind of inconsequential if you're sort of pinging them to talk about your stuff or their stuff. It's really, you've found someone who could be a really good ambassador for you, could be a good friend, could be just the right person to chat with. And you can't do that without starting a conversation somewhere.
Right, that's great advice. I think Zig Ziglar, the self-development author, etc., once said that people don't care that you know unless they know that you care. So your advice as well is to, don't go out and pitch your product and your idea necessarily. Go out and ask that person, what kind of pain points, what kind of challenges they're facing, right? Because once they know that you're interested in their problems and challenges, then they kind of open up, right? The conversation is about the solution, not necessarily the product, isn't it? And I know you mentioned the word pain points. Let's talk about that. What exactly do you mean? Because it's a term that some startup founders may be unaware of, or maybe they've heard it but don't really know what it is. And I think it's really important, isn't it, for people to go out there and discover what pain points are.
Yeah, I like to use an analogy for this. It seems a bit ridiculous, but when I think about problems and pain points, I think of literally if I have a nail that is lodged through my foot, I have a serious problem on my hands, right? Hey, I need to go to the hospital immediately. This is a problem. I have a nail through my foot.
Right.
If I have a stubbed toe, I have a lot less of a problem. And I think that's what I think of. That's the visual that I get when I think of pain points. These are things that are debilitating for people. These are the things that are stopping them from doing their jobs, stopping them from either living their lives or living the most fulfilled life they could have, right? So pain points are real things. They are real blockers or barricades to the path of having the most productive, the most efficient, the most fulfilling life, business, etc. So when I think of those pain points and when, entrepreneurs talk about pain points, to me, those should be real, tangible things. Nail in the foot problems, not stubbed toe problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it's great advice as well, because that nail in the foot is a good analogy, right? It's a good visual for people to hold on to. I think it's interesting as well, as people don't tell you what that nail in the foot is unless they kind of got some trust with you as well, right? So that's why it's so important to talk to people that you know or have some kind of relationship with, right? Because people don't often open up, or they kind of give you, I know people say in marketing that people buy on emotion and justify it with logic, right? So when you ask somebody, why did you buy that? They say, oh yeah, it's got a great QWERTY keyboard. But that's not the reason they really bought it. They bought it because they don't want to look like an idiot at the next meeting, or, when they get their smartphone out, that kind of thing, right? So it's kind of like those pain points, you need a bit of a relationship with that person. So go out and talk to the people that you know, your sort of first network, your inner circle, talk to them and, work from there, because they're going to give you some sort of honest feedback, right? That can't happen in the sort of digital world so much. You've got to get out there and do it in the analog world, right? You've got to talk to these people face to face over a coffee at an event and so on, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are real people behind computers.
Right.
I think that sometimes
we forget
that, yeah. There are real people behind those computers that have real problems. They have real businesses of their own. And, sometimes when you're starting to scale a company and you're sitting there playing a digital ad game and, you're spending just for conversions, or you're optimizing for conversions, you have landing pages, it feels like a big game. But these are real people.
Right.
We like to use personas. We like to use real people when we talk about customers. I like that when I'm mentoring. It humanizes it, because these are people whom we're actively trying to better. We're trying to make their lives better. We're trying to help them solve this problem or multiple problems. And so it's important to stay in touch with who they really are, knowing where they live, who they talk to, what they're interested in. All of those things I think are really important dynamics, not only for sales and marketing, which they're typically used for, but to make your product better, to make your team better, to make you more committed to the problem you're really trying to solve.
Cool. I know you said that you started TechDay, the event, to solve the problem that you had as a founder with DigitalOcean, meeting people and getting out there. And so I'm curious to know, when you started DigitalOcean, tell us a little bit about what it was like back then, and you and the other guys when you were starting out. What was the environment like, and what was the kind of vibe when you started that business?
Yeah, I mean, the landscape in New York 5 years ago was entirely different. I mean, it's really a testament to most of the sort of big startup hubs in the world at this point. They've grown quite significantly. And if you take a look back 5 years ago, none of them were anywhere near where they are today. I mean, London was a blip on our radar with a few different startups. New York had maybe 50, 100, no code schools of note quite yet, or maybe they were just starting. Developer was a totally unknown term to most of the world. But the point is, we were still building products, and there was a small group of us. It was just really hard to access each other. And it was really hard to access the collective talent we needed. It was really hard to get press to pay attention to us, because, their view of us was they're guys in back of a computer and maybe they're solving problems. We don't really know what's going on, right?
Right.
And so in New York specifically, that was an issue for everyone I knew who was in tech. And the point of TechDay was to bring all of those people together and to bring all of the resources that all of us needed together as well, right? To bring the press, the investors, the early adopters to play with our products, the people who can help and advise us. And it was just as much a product of educating them on what the startup community was and that there are cool companies here. The future is literally represented by the people in this room. And so that was really empowering. I started it just for fun, just to help the people around me and myself, obviously. And it grew. We got way more people in there than we expected. There were lines out the door and around the corner. And I sort of realized then that at some point in the future, this was going to be something that I wanted to concentrate or focus on. And every year we've grown quite significantly. Embarrassingly, I'm not traditionally an event guy, so our lines are a little long, but I promise if anyone who's listening has been to a Tech Day event, we're working on it. But that's the power of the tech community. It's growing. People love it. People want to get involved. Entrepreneurship is alive in the States, in the UK, even in Eastern Europe. We're just seeing such a vibrant scene in Hong Kong and Singapore. Everything is really starting to turn. And I know certainly in Tokyo as well, right?
Right.
So the entire ecosystem 5 years ago was a tiny, de minimis fraction of what it is today. And, Tech Day was just there to get everyone jump-started. And in emerging markets for startups, that's what we're trying to do now. Help people find mentors, help people find investors that make the most sense for them, help connect them with the right accelerator if that's the right thing. If they're a mid-stage company, help them to find the right partners for growth or connect with the right corporates. And that's what we're in business for, to connect people with resources. Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, we live in a digital world, don't we? But I suppose we work in a digital world. I mean, a lot of our products are digital, but the analog world, face to face, is priceless still, right? I mean, I think we forget the importance of getting out there. I wonder if that was the pain point that you hit upon when you set this up. I mean, we talked about pain points and setting up Tech Day, and you set this up as a bit of fun at the beginning, and then it sort of grew, and you realized, wow, actually, this is a movement. There's something going on here, right? And you tapped into that. What was the sort of frustrations that people had that were coming to the event? What was why were they coming to that? Why did they need an event? Why couldn't they just do all this on Facebook or Slack or whatever, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for the startups, it was scarcity of resources. That was the problem. It still is, right? The developers are very, very hard to come by. Technical people are hard to come by. Good business development folks are hard to come by. Connections to people in the corporate world are insanely challenging to make. So the problem was the scarcity of those connections and resources for companies who are trying to start something new. And then on the other side, early adopters are constantly looking for new things, but, what they get is an abstraction of what's really out there. I mean, you really only hear about things because the news covers it, or you'll hear about things because you just happen upon them online. But getting a tool that you might actually need or might really, really want, or something really cool that you just can't live without, that's incredibly hard to do. So discovery is just as much a pain point for the consumer and for the business markets, as is finding the scarcity of resources that companies have. So I think when we look at the different stakeholders we have, those are the two things that we're able to solve really well. We're able to actionably bring those people together. So, eating my own dog food here, right? There's a pain point or a problem that those companies have, and there's a problem that our attendees have. And we try our hardest to make sure that we solve both of them as well as we can all the time.
Right. This is 5 years ago when the scene was quite different, right? So it wasn't like it is today where all the press is, they're up to date with what the tech scene is. And, we've got the unicorn brands like the Ubers of this world, which kind of like helps everybody kind of understand what this is all about, right? So, you seem to like going out and doing the hard things, right? And just to give this a bit of background, we talked about you selling computers out of the back of your mom's car. There's also an interesting story which the listeners won't know about. That is you carrying 2 cinder blocks for a mile in an 8.5 minute mile for a black belt challenge. That for me is a guy who likes a challenge. So respect for that way back in your high school days. But it shows me that you like to do the hard things. And I'm just curious to know is that you seem to be somebody who likes swimming upstream a little bit. When you started out with DigitalOcean, you faced a lot of resistance in the sense that people didn't understand what you were doing, or the media wasn't kind of educated on what you were doing, and you were just kind of seen as the backroom boys type thing. Is that sort of a recurring issue in business for you, that's facing that kind of doubt and resistance? And how do you sort of deal with that? Because it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs face, right? And especially if they're beginning that journey, it may be something that derails them.
It's super hard. It's the challenge that I constantly have found myself in through my professional career. Figuring out when your gut, your instinct, what you've prepared for, trained for, built models for, evaluated for months, how that compares to the rest of the world telling you, I don't know. Right? That's probably one of the most challenging things I have continued to face all the time as a professional. Swimming upstream is totally fine. Competing in a saturated market is totally fine. But having the right game plan, knowing what that is, and hitting it the nail on the head is often very challenging, especially when there's so much noise. With DO, we had a lot of noise in the beginning with people who didn't even want to consider us in the same sentence as some of the other big web players. They just didn't want to hear it. With TechDay, the bigger events people that I've chatted with just said, 30,000 people, that's insane. That's never going to happen. Come back and talk to us when it's more realistic. And those things are doable. Becoming a company that provides a really good service for developers, DO did that. That was doable. There was a market, there was a plan, that was doable. So was building TechDay. But there are plenty of crazy ideas I have that just aren't doable or don't make sense, or they're resource constrained, or they're time constrained. And, balancing those things versus the big things that I do want to accomplish is a continuous challenge that keeps me up at night sometimes. So, yes, I don't have any advice for people because I barely am able to manage it myself. But being a bit crazy is totally all right if I'm an example of it.
I think that's a good advice in itself, isn't it? Because people feel that, especially if they're starting out as an entrepreneur, is that they feel that kind of self-doubt. It's that, oh, I'm a bit crazy. I haven't sort of reconciled all of this stuff. But it's great to know that even people like you are like that, right? But you're kind of holding it all
delusional, together. As long as you're crazy and not delusional, then it's totally fine.
Right, but how do you know that? I know we laugh about it, but isn't that a key point? Because, okay, what I'm trying to get to is it's a whole set of advice in entrepreneurialism about, do what you love and never give up, right? And I see a lot of people follow that advice and they fail, right? Because they pick something, they think, yeah, this is a great idea. I'm going to work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week doing this, and that's going to be my formula for success, right? But you're kind of saying, well, okay, you've got to have a bit of that crazy, but don't be delusional. How do I know, or how do you know that you're not delusional, right? I mean, where's that perspective come in? Because how do you know you're backing the right idea? How do you choose between an idea that's delusional and one that's just kind of, like, this is the home run hit, right?
For me, there's a barrier, right? When I think to myself, how can this not work? That's the phrase, or that's the thing in my mind that makes me think again. And I think that's the same for a lot of entrepreneurs I've talked with, right? The idea of how can this not work, or I see no situation where this isn't a huge success, means there's definitely a flaw, right?
Right.
So I think that's the line for delusional. That's the demarcation line, right? It's when you're so certain there's no ounce of doubt left. That's where I would become very uncomfortable. I'm only comfortable when there's just enough doubt, right? When the recipe is just right. But when you are so positive that you're not open to interpretation, you're not open to feedback, you're not really considering all of the elements around you, that doesn't mean acting on them, but definitely considering people around you, then I think you've crossed that line, and it's very difficult to turn back once you've committed that far. So for me, at least personally, when I hit that sort of phrase, how can this not work? Everything makes sense. That's when I think twice. And that's when I think, oh, maybe I am a little delusional here.
Right. I've never heard it put like that. So you're saying, if you have an idea and you can't see how this is going to go wrong, time to step back.
To reevaluate it. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that maybe you need to be a little bit more open to interpretation or open to feedback. And maybe there's room for improvement that you're not seeing. So yeah.
Do you consciously go through the scenarios with your ideas and your projects and think, right, how could this fail? Do you actually work through those?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a bit nuts when it comes to bucketing things. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. And so I generally keep rubrics for my ideas, just like I keep rubrics for investable companies. And I think that's really important, sort of knowing where your barriers are, what you get excited about when you check the right boxes, right? For me, an idea has to solve a problem. It has to be a solution that adequately solves the problem. It has to have a market that wants the solution very badly. And it has to have the market segment that is willing to pay for that idea, is willing to support that idea so that you're not doing it for charity. And it has to have a path towards, serious growth, not just something that will adequately solve a problem for a few hundred people, but something that will adequately solve a conscious problem for a lot of people, and it will continue to grow and grow and grow. And so I go through that rubric all the time. And when I get down that pipeline and I say, well, how could this not help millions of people immediately? That's when I know I should maybe go back to the problem and just make sure that the problem, the solution, the market, they're all right. Now, that being said, some ideas I've had have checked all the boxes and have been great, and I've done them, and they've worked out really, really well. TechDay is one of those examples. So I don't want to discourage anyone. I just want to caution, right? Most startup companies fail. That's a reality. It's unfortunately not the norm to succeed. It's not the norm to sell for billions of dollars. It's not the norm to build a company that's sustainable within a few months. Those are not normal things. But, with some really good thought, with keeping that rubric in your head, with checking the boxes on the problem, the solution, the market segment, and all of those things, you give yourself the best shot at being able to actually have or taste or get to some success. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to realize.
And probably a great reason why people should have a mentor or advisor, or at least some kind of mastermind network where people can call people out, right? If you've got this idea and you haven't kind of worked through these steps or these boxes that you need to check off, then you can have somebody who's not necessarily in the day-to-day of your business, but who can see things from a different perspective. Because when you're in the day-to-day, you can't really step outside and think about these kind of problems and on the bigger level, right? Do you actively have this yourself? I mean, I know you actively mentor and advise and invest in startups, but what do you do for yourself? Do you have that kind of network or advisors, or how does Alec Hartman get advice or feedback?
It's hard. I've never had one mentor that I go to for everything, and that's been a challenge. I really wish I had met someone in the professional world who shares my bit of crazy and understands me and has been there before. Unfortunately, I haven't met that person yet, but I still have hope that I will. In order to make sure that I don't jump off the deep end, or that what I'm doing makes really, really clear sense all the time, I have a great professional network of people whom I'm proud aren't just acquaintances or real friends, all over the world. And they're doing amazing things. And I think supporting them in what they're doing has made me a better friend and a better person and more knowledgeable, and they're more than happy to do the same for me. So I think having that friend network, while it might not be as great as a mentor network, I don't know, it is something super important to me, and I'm very thankful to have it. But I advise everyone, if they can find a mentor, please do. I think it's really valuable, and I cherish the relationships I have with the people I've mentored. I think that just amazing and incredibly humbling to be able to make a difference in people's lives who are actively pursuing this challenge of starting a company against all odds. So, if you could find someone like me who really wants to help, you should take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great advice. And get yourself along to TechDay. They'll be able to meet you face to face, maybe not just over the internet or listen to your voice, but they'll be able to catch up with you and your people at TechDay. Your next one is in September. Tell us a little about the events coming up.
Yeah, no, we have an event in September in Los Angeles. It's a really cool emerging market. I think that Los Angeles is really sort of the media-focused startups coming out of that area are just really amazing. And so I'm pretty passionate about helping that ecosystem as much as I can. And then we're in London in October 27th, and working with companies there. We've seen a lot of fintech coming out of London, and I've been mentoring at a lot of the accelerators there, and I just think that that's a really great market because you see a lot of corporates who are coming in and stepping up and saying, hey, we see what's happening with startups. We love it. We want to help. Similarly, you're getting a lot of governmental support, and that's made London just, I think, rocket past where they sort of should be to way beyond that. So that's exciting. So we're going to be in both of those markets this year, coming back to LA and then being in London for our first time.
Fantastic. That's a lot of travel, Alec. That's Alec Hartman, everybody. Entrepreneur, investor, mentor, and advisor of startups. You can meet Alec at TechDay and get along and meet people like him, a lot of like-minded entrepreneurs. Go and find yourself a mentor. Go and find yourself a group of entrepreneurs to hang out with. Alec, you're an inspiration. Where do we find out more about you?
You can hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, or pretty much every major social channel, or just email me, alec@alechartman.com.
Fantastic. We'll put all that in the show notes. Alex, it's been a real pleasure having you on today. Thanks for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Founder FM, voice of the entrepreneur. Find out more at www.founderfm.com.